So I decided to build an analytics dashboard for my e-commerce store called AdsMetri. AdsMetri started as a Meta Ads budget manager, which sounds simple, and that was the first warning sign. Because a budget manager is not just a button that says spend less money, although honestly that would be a strong product category. The app had to connect to Meta, sync campaigns, queue budget changes, run those changes at the right time, show account-specific activity, and not quietly mix one ad account into another. Then the product grew. It became a dashboard for reading ad performance, lifecycle charts, funnels, ROAS, cost per acquisition, cost per click, spend trends, break-even ROAS, and daily Meta P&L. In plain English, it stopped being only change the budget and became tell me what is actually working. That is a much scarier sentence, because once software starts telling you what is working, the real problem is not whether the chart renders. The real problem is whether the chart is telling the truth. That is why this build ended up spread across 3 AI harnesses: Claude, Manus, and Codex. Not because 3 sounds more impressive than 1. 3 is also how many browser tabs I opened before forgetting why I am alive. The real reason was that AdsMetri was not one problem. It was 3 problems pretending to be one. One problem was product and interface clarity. What should this dashboard show? How should it feel? What should the user understand first? And what should not be crammed into the U? I like a tax form with a growth mindset. That became Claude's strongest lane. One problem was live reality, OAuth, Meta API behavior, token permissions, deployment, database state, dummy data, tests, and whether the product actually worked against real accounts instead of only in a pleasant local fantasy. That became Manus's strongest lane. And one problem was the codebase itself: account state, analyzer snapshots, scheduling logic, pending changes, chart behavior, and the bugs where the UI looked fine while the underlying logic was holding a small meeting without you. That became Codex's strongest lane. The mistake was treating those tools like interchangeable assistants. The useful version was treating them like specialized harnesses with handoffs. Quick context: this devlog was made inside Spoolcast, my AI video pipeline. Spoolcast can start from source material, like chats, transcripts, repo notes, research, or story ideas, then help turn that into a script, shot list, visuals, narration, render, and final files. I still direct it with feedback and approvals, which, based on this episode, also includes telling the system to follow the protocol that it wrote down for itself. Software automation is powerful. It is also occasionally a clipboard with confidence. For this devlog, I am keeping the stories source-backed. I am using the pasted Codex, Manus, and Claude perspectives from the chat. If something is uncertain, I will say it is uncertain instead of sanding it into a cleaner story. Because the whole point of this video is not, I made a product. The point is what actually shipped, what broke, and what multi-AI work taught us after the novelty wore off. The first version of AdsMetri was operational. Connect a Meta ad account, sync campaigns, show performance metrics, queue budget changes, execute those changes later, keep an activity log so the user can see what happened. That sounds like product plumbing, because it is. But plumbing is one of those things people only call boring when it works. Manus reported building much of that foundation: app scaffold, database tables, meta OAuth, token management, campaign sync, budget queues, scheduler behavior, dummy data, legal pages, deployment setup, and a test suite reported as 73 tests. I am saying reported because this script is using the pasted summaries as source. I am not independently re-auditing Manus's entire history here, but the role is clear. Manus was closest to foundation plus live verification. It was the harness dealing with the product as something that had to connect to the outside world. The best example was campaign visibility. Some campaigns were not syncing. The exact count is inconsistent across the pasted notes, so I am not going to invent a clean number. The important part is the root cause: Meta API token permissions. The sync logic can look suspicious, the database can look suspicious, the front end can look suspicious. And then the answer is, the token was not allowed to see the campaign. That is not a bug you solve by staring harder at a React component. That is why live verification mattered. The product had to be checked against what the real platform allowed, not just what the code hoped was true. Manus also hit time zone work. The scheduler originally had an 11 p.m. Bangkok assumption. but Meta Ads works on account calendar day boundaries. Manus reported refactoring that to a midnight to -12 to 30 window in the ad account time zone. A clock can be perfectly accurate and still be wrong for the product. Very inspiring. Very irritating. Manus also called out numeric precision from the Meta API. Tiny floating point weirdness sounds harmless until it becomes a dashboard number and someone asks why finance looks haunted. So Manus's lane was not just build features, it was connect to reality, check reality, and stop reality from entering the product wearing a fake mustache. But live verification does not automatically make the app coherent. You can prove the data exists and still display it in the wrong account, the wrong chart, or the wrong moment. That was the Codex lane. Codex was the repo-level implementation and debugging harness. In plain English, it worked where the product's moving pieces had to agree inside the actual code. Codex's pasted summary covered dashboard, analyzer, settings, budget flows, campaign sync, account scoping, pending change display, recent activity scoping, multi-account state bugs, analyzer lifecycle behavior, chart interactions, right edge labels, visibility controls, fulfillment economics, time zone fallback cleanup, account-aware scheduling, and compact theme implementation after design direction was set. That list is long because state bugs are social creatures. They rarely arrive alone. The selected Meta account had to match the dashboard had to match pending changes had to match the scheduler, the analyzer had to match the selected account and available snapshots, activity logs had to be scoped to the right account. A rendering bug is visible. A state bug hides behind a clean interface and waits for you to trust it. Wrong data does not always look broken. Sometimes it looks professional. It wears a nice font and ruins your week. Codex's hard bugs were often not where they first appeared. A chart issue could be a snapshot coverage issue. A dashboard issue could be an account filtering issue. A sync issue could be cached database state disagreeing with live meta state. A time zone issue could be a fallback assumption hiding in one part of the UI. This is where the product shifted from does the screen work to does the screen mean what it says. That is a much stricter test. Codex also worked on fulfillment economics, fulfillment costs, break-even ROAS, daily Meta P&L, and break-even thinking. That changed the product question from how much did we spend to did this actually make money? Once money math enters the dashboard, believable is not good enough. You need boringly correct. The best financial UI is a little boring. Exciting finance dashboards are how people end up in meetings with legal pads and no joy. But correct behavior still does not make a product feel usable. The user has to understand it. That was Claude's lane. Claude was strongest as the design and specification harness. Claude made compact theme HTML mockups for the dashboard, analyzer campaigns, analyzer ad sets, analyzer ads, and settings. It iterated on tooltip shape, funnel layout, sidebar structure, P&L color rules, spend by campaign callouts, background colors, outlines, and negative space. In plain English, Claude helped decide what the product should look like and how the interface should communicate the work. Design is not decoration here. If AdsMetri is telling someone where ad performance is changing, the UI has to make comparison easy. If it is showing profit safety or fulfillment break-even, the UI has to make risk legible. If it is handling multiple accounts, the UI has to make the current account obvious. Nobody should have to perform archaeology in a dropdown. Claude also wrote a handoff package for Codex, design tokens, infrastructure notes, component guidance, preserve rules, and mockup copies. That turned design output into implementation instructions. When that worked, it was a handoff. When it did not, it was just two assistants confidently standing on different maps. Claude's self-report also included mistakes, which is useful because mistakes are where the workflow becomes real. It admitted inventing structures instead of reading the repo closely enough. One example was designing lifecycle stages as grouped tiles when the real app used a flatter grid of per asset cards. Another was adding profit scatter quadrants that did not exist in the actual component. The user caught both. That is not a footnote. That is part of the system. AI design work can be fast, but if it is not anchored to the real code and product state, it can become very polished fiction. Claude also shipped one isolated analyzer chart improvement, a compact tooltip, and right edge labels. using a custom SVG renderer with collision handling. It verified that with type check and build. But Claude could not visually verify the running app because the environment needed OAuth-related variables it did not have. So the honest version is, the code passed, but the eyes were not invited. This is why 3 AIs were useful, and also why 3 AIs were dangerous. Claude could help decide what good should look like. Manus could help prove what the live product and platform were actually doing. Codex could make the implementation hold together inside the codebase. But if the boundaries were blurry, the workflow created new failure modes. One model could design against an imagined structure. Another could verify live behavior without owning the code path. Another could make a valid repo change against an outdated design direction. All 3 outputs could be individually reasonable and still combine into a product that was wrong. That is the multi-AI lesson. Basically, it's teamwork, but with more JSON. By the end of the pasted history, AdsMetri had become much broader than a budget manager. Meta OAuth, campaign sync, budget queues, account time scheduling, dashboard metrics, expandable campaign structures, analyzer snapshots, lifecycle behavior, funnel views, multi-account scoping, activity scoping, fulfillment economics, break-even ROAS, daily Meta P&L, compact UI direction, brand cleanup, tests, legal pages, OAuth redirect fixes, and deployment support. That is not one feature. That is a small city of features pretending to be a dashboard. The hard parts were mostly between the features. The app had to stop mixing accounts. It had to stop assuming the wrong time zone. It had to stop treating a permission issue like a sync bug. It had to stop showing plausible charts without enough verification underneath. It had to stop letting design drift away from the real component structure. The demo is fast. The product is where the receipts show up. So the lesson from AdsMetri is not 3 AIs built a product. That is too clean. The better lesson is, AdsMetri only became manageable when the work separated into 3 real lanes. Claude for design and spec. Manus for foundation and live verification. Codex for repo-level implementation and debugging. Those roles did not remove coordination work. They made the coordination work visible. And once it was visible, it could be managed. That is less magical than the usual AI story. It is also more useful. AdsMetri is what AI-assisted product building actually looked like here. Fast progress, false leads, permission problems, time zone traps, chart paranoia, design handoffs, tests, deployment chores, and a lot of state management. Not a clean montage. More like a real build. Except sometimes the debugging assistant opens a pull request, and everyone pretends that is normal now.